co-host tonight. We're going to be talking about interviewing skills and maybe some resume stuff. So I don't know who's kicking us off, but either Tiffany or Richard.
Thank you. So I will start, and this is my first time sharing a screen on Zoom. So I will apologize if I do something wrong. And it's making me give it permissions. So give me a moment. And it's not going to let me share without leaving the meeting. So I will be right back.
I was going to say, if he has the green share button, we learned.
You should have been here for class number 1.
Yeah.
Patty would have set him straight. This wouldn't have happened.
Yes.
I think it was such a great idea to start with Zoom as the first workshop.
Yes. You see, I have my extra lighting today. I didn't do, oh man, I didn't do the lipstick.
Okay, technical difficulties as usual. So let's try sharing screen again. Oh, look at that. Now I can actually see what I'm doing. Okay. So does everybody see just one slide with 2 words, job interviews?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So I am very minimalist in my slides. Most of my content I'll be speaking. So if you want anything specific, I'm happy to send my script. This is adapted from a talk that I usually do with lots of young people who are starting their own businesses and trying to figure out how to manage public speaking, because everybody's a little bit put off by public speaking. Some people love it, but job interviews are a form of public speaking. And so I want to talk to you about how you enter a job interview and be the best you that you can be. So the first thing that I want to share with you is the interviewer wants you to succeed. And a lot of people don't necessarily feel that or internalize that feeling. I want you to think about why. The person or group that you're interviewing with, most of them want you to be the last person they have to interview. They want to hire you, they want to fill the job, they want to get going with the work that needs to be done. So think about that for a minute before you walk into the next interview that you have, in person or in video. The person that you're meeting wants you to succeed. And let that be the confidence builder you need to go in and tell your story. The second most important thing here is to be yourself in these situations. It may feel like you should try to impress the interviewer or the panel that you're talking to. It may feel like, you want them to think that you're the best person ever. But most employers want candidates who are able to honestly assess their experiences, their strengths, and their weaknesses. And that strong sense of self, of knowing who you are, is a really important way to both describe yourself, but also to give them confidence in your abilities. The challenge is when you start exaggerating or start trying to become the person you think they want you to be to fill the job, it's really hard to keep track of what you tell an interviewer. And you'll quickly find yourself struggling to keep up with what you've said to somebody or another person. Keep it simple, be you and always be you. And going back to point 1, use that confidence of knowing they're looking for the right person for the next job and they want that to be you, all right? On the same flip side of that, we're talking about being positive and being confident, but don't, and not overselling yourself, but also don't undersell yourself. It's very important. In this country, we're taught to be, humble and say things like, I tried, or I did my best. And sometimes you succeed and sometimes you don't. In interviewing and hiring, we all know, walking into the room, that you're here to present the best picture of yourself. You're here to present a positive picture of yourself. And you're here to talk about how you succeeded and maybe some things that challenged you. So be confident in your abilities, be confident in what you've achieved, and focus on the positives as much as possible. I usually tell young people, don't qualify things by saying, I tried really hard. We know you tried. What we want to talk about is what you did and how you succeeded. So instead of saying something like, I always try to work very hard, think about saying something more confident, like, I've been able to successfully complete the work that's been assigned to me, and I'm learning and growing as an employee and determining how I can complete more challenging assignments. So think about, in the conversations you have and the types of questions you're answered, be thinking about how to answer them without being too humble, but without being too braggy. I guess there's that middle road that we have to find. It's a challenge, but you can do it. The next thing that is important is having an elevator pitch. Now, some of you may be familiar with this, some not. An elevator pitch is a 30 to 60-second summary of you. You'll get interrupted. You'll be in an interview and someone will say, I'm sorry, I have to cut the time short. So practice explaining both your skills and your goals in as few words as possible. You want to give the interviewer just enough to leave them wanting to ask follow-up questions, so they'll come back and ask you more. Now, this is a really challenging thing to do. We often will give open-ended answers or long stories. This is different. This is a 30 to 60-second pitch. So what I want you to do is find a friend who doesn't do the same job you do, maybe not even the same industry you do, and practice getting your goals and your achievements into that 30 to 60 seconds. And if you can explain what you do and what you want to do in that short period of time to someone who really doesn't have an understanding of your industry or job function, you've got it. Once you've got that, you can go into any interview confident that if you get cut short, you can give your kind of closing message very quickly, leave them wanting more, so they'll call you. The last thing that I have for you is sending thank you notes. So the thank you note is a bit of a lost tradition at this point in America, but that means you can use it to stand above the rest of people who are interviewing. Most people now will send an email thank you saying, hey, thanks for the time. I hope you really liked me. I would love to have the job. And you know, it's kind of a standard thing that people do. But in the old days, which weren't that long ago, we sent handwritten thank you notes. And I think it's something you can use to your advantage. Think about when you receive a handwritten card from somebody. Do you treat it like an email and file it away or delete it right away? Probably not. You get a handwritten card, you're like, oh, this is pretty.
No,
and you
look
put it on a shelf
Yeah.
or you put it on your desk.
Yeah.
And you keep it and you look at it for a little bit. That reminder of you will sit on someone's desk for a few days or a few weeks until they finally get around to tidying up. And during that time, your thanks is there and your person, who you are, can be top of mind for someone. Those reminders are really helpful as people are making decisions about hiring, but also could be an open door. On a couple of occasions, I've had someone say, hey, it's been a couple weeks, there's another job coming up we'd like to talk to you about. And I can attribute that in my mind to, I sent something that hung around longer than I could be present. That little card just sat there on the desk and did my work for me. So that's my structured talk. I'm always happy to take questions about interviewing or questions about resumes. But at this moment, I'll hand to Tiffany so she can talk about what she's prepared for the evening. And then we'll do some Q&A at the end. Does that work? Okay, so I think I hit stop sharing.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My portion is going to be a little bit more interactive after I share some tips. We're going to actually practice, because I think it's really important to actually practice interviewing skills. We received a survey, so I know a couple of you have not gone through an interview today before. So tonight you will be able to get practice. And you have myself and Richard and the rest of my team who can share some more tips. So first, when I was thinking about putting this together, there's the in-person interview versus virtual. So I'll give you some tips on both. Since we are starting to open back up, it's really important to share both tips. So if you are having an in-person interview, we want to make sure that we dress professionally. And when I say dress professionally, that would be, it doesn't have to be a business suit, but it should be some dress pants and a dress shirt. It should be like modest colors like blue, black, gray, nothing too eccentric. Um, your jewelry for females should be, like post earrings, nothing big and gaudy. Make sure your makeup is not loud. You want to look really reserved and professional when you go for your interviews. That's for in person. Um, Also, like no low cut blouses, right? You want to make sure that everything is professional. Shirts button all the way to the top. Um, then when you get there, you want to make sure you give a firm handshake. You want to make sure you smile and just show how pleasant you are, even welcoming coming into your interview. Put your phone on silent.
Mm,
Please put your phone on silent. That's big because even on whether it's virtual or in person, that could be a distraction right in the middle of you either answering questions or the interviewer asking you questions. You don't want alarms going off. So just make sure everything is off with your phone. Research the company before. I'm big on that one, especially in my line of work. I like for people to know something about the company that you're applying for or the agency or whatever business that you're applying in. Most times they will have a website. So it's easy to just find out a little bit about them. Find out what if they have their mission statement listed on their website, just find out who they are and what they stand for. And then when you start doing your interviewing skills, you can say something to let the interviewer know, okay, I have done some research about the company and I do know a little bit about it. Next, be sure to answer the question. And so with this, you can take your time. That some interviews are timed, so you have to pay attention. If they tell you that there's a time limit to it, you want to just make sure you pay attention to when you're answering your questions. Make sure you're answering the question fully, but then you have to be a little bit more succinct or brief when you answer. Versus if they tell you there is no time limit, that's the time where you can take some time and when they say the question, take a deep breath, think about what you're going to say. Even if you have paper, you may be able to jot it down before you answer. So you can make sure you completely think about what they're asking you. Have prepared answers to the questions. As Richard already shared, you should already have something prepared. You should know pretty much how you're going to answer most questions. Most interviews have a common 5 or 10 questions that they ask. That I'm going to go over those in a minute. But you should have those prepared answers already. So you should know how to respond. And then practice. As you heard Richard say, practice with someone else. You can practice with your kids. You can practice with a neighbor, a friend. Just getting into practice of, like Richard's already shared with us, it's more like public speaking because you want to present, you want to make sure you're projecting clearly. You want to make sure you can be understood. You want to make sure you're using proper terminology and proper language tenses, all of that. So it's always best to practice. And so that's for if it's in person. Virtual is a whole different world, which we're becoming to become more comfortable with. When it all started, all of us were, scrambling with technology and all of those things. So the biggest thing with virtual interviews, please check your technology. I did interviews all last week, and I had to ask a lady to please, I didn't want to distract her, but I had to have her go to another room because the room that she was in, the strength of the internet was not strong. And so here we are trying to take notes and listen to her as best as we could, but it was going in and out. And so if you know that there's a room where you get better, I don't know if it's really reception dealing with internet, but if you know that there's a room that's closer to your Wi-Fi box or whatever, that the internet is stronger, try to set up your space in that room. because then it will not be interruptions. When we're talking about setting up your space, make sure it's a professional setting. Make sure there's no clutter in the background. You can try to do a blank wall or something similar to what I have, just one picture in the background. But make sure that space is clear, no people in the background. I think you all were on with Patty. And so that we've learned that you can blur the background, right? So there are things that you can do to overcome if you can't go to a different room. So there are other options. But if you don't know how to blur your background and do those type of things, make sure it's just against a blank wall. Professional dress. The best part about virtual interviews, you can have your professional dress from the top up. There are many days that I have on a dress blouse and I may have on leggings or shorts or pajama pants or whatever. So the best part about virtual, you can just have it from, even the top up, and no one really knows what you have on at the bottom. And again, you still want to have the modest earrings, just a little post. In virtual world, you want to do, they call it jewel tone. So those are like your reds, your blues, your greens. A lot of times the white, as I have on white, will wash out, right? So you don't want anything that's going to wash out your skin, make it really hard for you to be seen in your interview. What else? Test your technology, make sure your background, make sure your room is quiet. So again, I understand that we all have children, but try to go to a room that's quiet, try to keep them, in a separate area, because that could be a distraction. So anything that will distract, you want to make sure that room is quiet. You want to make sure there are no TVs in the background. Make sure your phone is on silent. No alarms are going off when you're having your interview. And again, the same as in person, you want to practice the common questions. And then for both, don't be late. The worst thing is showing up for your interview in person or on your virtual environment late. The key is to show up 15 minutes early. That's the best thing, in person as well as in virtual environment. So I just said we did interviews all last week, and we can see in our work environment, we can see when you log on, right? So even if we're in another interview, we can still see that you started the meeting, and that's okay. And even if you have to wait 15 minutes, it's okay, but it's best for you to wait on us than us to have to start a meeting and wait for you to enter, if that makes sense. So try your best to show up 15 minutes early. So those are my tips on in person and virtual. So now here comes the fun part. So who's going to be my brave soul? And I'm looking at Hallelujah. Is that I said that right? I love that name. You are in my top. You're right beside me in the box. So if you're brave, which I'm hoping you are, we're all friendly, and that's why we're here. You want to be my first candidate?
Okay.
So thank you. So let's see. What job are you interested in?
I'm interested now in home health care.
Okay. I can go with that one. I work for the fire department, so I can make this up. Let's see. So this is Wesley Home Helpers, home care. Okay. So Hallelujah, tell me why I should hire you at Wesley's Home Helpers Care. Why should I hire you?
I want to help people. I love helping people, and I can work with my schedule also, with my husband's and mine, to compare with that to work You make me first. I'm afraid.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's okay.
I didn't think anything. Okay.
Okay.
I didn't work before as a home health care, but my
Okay.
plan for the future is to be like a nurse aide. So I want to take that course and to work with that.
Okay.
But before I was working another work in Ethiopia as a electrical warehouse manager. I was
Okay.
working with that, but when I came to America, I didn't work. But
Hmm.
I am very eager to work because of my kids. I couldn't work.
Yeah. Now, now, hallelujah. Have you ever helped care for any elderly people in your family?
Yes, I was
So,
helping my grandfather. He
okay.
was diabetic, and I was taking care of him
Okay.
until he got to God.
Yes.
And I like helping people very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so for Tiffany's question about why we should hire you for home health care, you might want to talk about how your experience caring for your grandfather showed you how important it was to have someone who's caring and helpful at the side of our elderly, and that you got great fulfillment from that, and you want to do that professionally. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Excellent. See how we worked this out? You thought it was playing. Excellent, because you always want to tie it in. And a lot of times that's what I think people forget, their natural skills, right? And I know
Right.
you said that you never worked as a nurse aide before. So that's where you can follow up. I've never worked as a nurse aide before, but I'm very eager to learn. I have
Mhm.
cared for my grandfather, and it gave me a passion and a desire to help others. So you can always tie it into what you already know, what you already do. And a lot of times we forget that. We forget that we're already taking care of the kids
Yeah.
and all of those
Yeah.
skills that we have. So it's not that you're truly inexperienced. You do have, the knowledge, and you know what it takes. So remember the things that you're already doing. And that's why it's very important to practice and prepare these responses. Because even if they don't ask you in that way, if they don't say, tell me why we should select you, there is going to be a question somewhere in there that's leading to what would make you the best candidate. Why should we hire you? Or what skills do you have that make you the best fit? It's always going to be something that ties in, remember what makes you stand out, about, because at the end of the day, they're trying to decide which person would be best fit with the company or the agency. So very
Uh,
good.
Enough? Okay.
Okay,
Can
look,
I
I'll
talk
let
more?
you off. I'll come back.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Tiffany, may I add something to that?
Sure,
I
absolutely.
think that she could have also expanded on her experience as an electrical warehouse manager, because in the home health field, it's all about being able to manage other people, their activities of daily living. And though it's not like the same industry, she could have also expanded on her role as a manager and like making sure that everything is in place and all of that. But I thought that was really good and brave of her to just do what she just did. So yeah, good job,
Absolutely.
Hallelujah.
That was an excellent point.
Okay.
Okay, Yolanda, you ready? You're next on my screen. Sorry. You ready?
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
So what job are you interested
I
in?
think so. Well, I wanted to do something in like computers. I've never really had a job in like computers and things like that, IT and things like that. So
Okay. All right. Let's see. So another common question. So Yolanda, tell me, what is your greatest strength?
mm, think my greatest strength is kind of being able to get along with everybody, with most people. And I guess being able, like, being willing, always willing to try to learn something new, or trying to get into something, doing something else, doing something new, learning something.
Okay. Is that it?
Sorry. I don't know.
No.
Okay. So it's okay. It's okay to, so that's typically a common question. They always ask, what are your greatest strengths? What are your weaknesses? And so that's another one you want to practice. That's another one you want to try to narrow down, because sometimes when they ask, what is your greatest strength? We just did another interview and we were truly looking for one, right? So some jobs will, I know in the fire service, we always have like response guidelines, meaning these are typical responses of how we think the candidate should respond. And so in this particular question, we wanted the people that were applying for the job, we wanted them to narrow it down to one strength. Like, we didn't want to just go through and just spill out all these different things. So if you can try to practice and narrow it down to one good strength that you have, your response, you said being able to get along with people, but then you said, well, with most people. And so try to stay away from anything.
Well, I
Remember,
mean,
Richard said be positive. So
Yeah.
we want to stay away from anything to say most, because now as an interviewer, I'm thinking, uh-oh, she's not going to get along with everybody. She hasn't heard me. That's honest.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to say any
Mhm,
negative
mhm.
terms. And that's why I say practice, continue to practice. You
Yeah.
don't want to say anything that's going to make me think of a reason not to hire you.
Right.
And that could be one if you say
Okay.
most.
So for both of you,
Oh yeah.
are you feeling how difficult it is to talk about yourself? Do you feel that difficulty of like, oh, I'm being asked to talk about myself? And that feeling will get better the more you practice these skills, for sure. And like Tiffany said, I get along with everybody, well, most people. That's a great example of the being positive. I get along with a lot of people is a nice way to say that. I get along with everybody. We know, as the interviewer, we know there's going to be somebody you don't like. That's just work, right? There's always somebody. But if you don't say anything about it, it doesn't catch in our brains. It's like, oh, she's a team player. She gets along with everybody. That's great. And you don't have to qualify it. You don't feel like you have to hedge your bets or qualify your statements or soften them. Just be confident in your ability to get along with people and use that as part of your description of yourself.
One thing talking about being positive that I've also learned that goes a long way is never speak poorly about anyone or a previous job. So that's one thing. If someone comes in and they just start complaining, oh, I had to leave, that person was horrible, and this person was horrible, it kind of sends some red flags too, even though that might be the case, even though your boss could have been the worst boss in the world, but being able to speak really positive and professional. It can be, I had a lot of learning experiences. I learned how to work in challenging situations. So, I mean, those are kind of some of the positive spins too. It's easy to go down that I'm talking to my friend here and not really thinking too much about it. But yeah, definitely just being positive about your work experience and not talking poorly about anyone. I know that's a lesson that I've learned.
And along with what Richard said about the uncomfortable part about talking about yourself, remember you're selling yourself. That's the way I look at it. You're selling yourself because there could be one other candidate, or it could be 5, it could be 20. other candidates that you're up against. So this is no time to be shy. This is no time to be, again, you don't want to be cocky or overconfident, but you do want to show that I am confident in my skills, I'm confident in my abilities, and you want to display that. So you want to brag a little bit about yourself,
Yeah.
you know, even though I may not have worked in this type of job before, I'm going to come in there and I'm going to outwork anybody because my work ethic, you know, those type of things. You want to display that you're a hard worker because everybody wants a hard worker no matter what the industry is. Okay. So very good. Let's
Question
see.
for Tiffany
Yes.
and for Richard. So on this question, I feel like I think it's one of those questions that I struggle to when I had interviews, because you hone in on one thing as your greatest strength, and it feels very short. That question feels very short. So what would the tip be? Like, I identify my strength. Do I give examples of times that I have displayed that strength?
That's
To
good.
expand on that, because I feel like it can be a very short answer. That one, and then your great, like, what would you say your weaknesses? I feel like those are the ones that always catch me, because I don't say enough on them. So what would you say to expand?
Yeah,
The
that's excellent. And
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead, Tiffany.
Okay. And then I'll let you go. But I was gonna say I always that's a great point, because I always say make sure you expound on especially the weakness, because most people will say a weakness. First of all, it's hard. It's hard to come up with a weakness, right? But you always want to just say, for me, my weakness was procrastination. It used to be. But I'm always looking for something to follow up with. My weakness is procrastination, but I've been working on, and you can give an example of how you're working to overcome that weakness. So make it always have something always positive to follow up. So, for example, my weakness is procrastinating, but I've been working on time management that will help me. I'm using a planner now. I'm entering appointments on my phone and setting an alarm to help me with the procrastination. So now I know this project is coming, this project is due. So did you see what I did? I gave an example of, yes, it's a weakness, but I also gave a thing, something that I'm working on to turn it into a strength.
Yeah. That's exactly what I would have said too, Tiffany. You know, it's a question that people think is designed to trap you in an interview. The fear is that, oh, if I admit my weakness, they're going to say I'm not suitable for the job. So, you know, people will give answers. Well, my weakness is that I work too hard. It's like, okay, what a good interviewer is looking for is just self-awareness. That idea that I think about who I am and what I do well and what I don't do well, and how do I address those things that I don't do well. Like Tiffany using the procrastination example, I usually talk about, like, I'm a big picture person, not a down in the weeds detail person. So how do I manage that as a weakness? I surround myself with teammates who are deep down in the weeds. They know the details, they've got the project plans, and they tell me when things are due and what to do next. And then I can focus on the big ideas and the big pictures and the different skills that need to be in the team. But together we complement each other and manage each other's weaknesses.
Excellent.
And also the power of telling stories. They say people retain, if you tell a story, people retain the story, you know, like 5 times as much as they do if you just say, like, hey, I'm really hardworking. You know, so you could say something like, you know, what's your weakness? I could say, you know, like Richard, I think you alluded to this. For me, I'm a total nightmare at learning systems. Like, if I had to work a cash register, I'd be the biggest disaster in the entire world. Like, I can't remember multi-step processes, which, you know, the interviewer is sitting there like, oh my God, we're never going to hire this guy. But then you hit them with that. But here's what I've done to change that. I take meticulous notes. and I have all these notes up in front of me, and I found that I'm not really good at memorizing A, B, C, D, but once I internalize the process, I know it like the back of my hand. So I've learned that by making this sort of Bible of notes, I eventually internalize it, and then I become better at systems than people who are traditionally really good at learning systems. So kind of take them to the ledge, tell a good story, and be honest about with yourself.
I like that, because that goes back to Richard's point in the beginning. Be yourself. Don't try to make up something and try to, be yourself. Be who you are and present how you normally would, because people can see that. They can see when you're making it up and you're kind of trying too hard, and they can see when you're being yourself and you're being honest. So that was good. Thank you. So next is Irene.
Okay, this is off the subject. Hi, Chief Wesley. I met you. You came to the Shelton and you did the fire truck with us, and my daughter wanted to do the fire camp. So good to see you.
Hey, how are you?
But COVID hit and fire camp didn't happen. But nice to see you again.
Okay, and we are doing it this year, so we'll talk after.
Okay.
We'll talk after your interview.
If your number didn't change, I have your number.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Okay. So, okay, what's your question? I'm sorry.
Okay, so what type of job are you interested in?
I think I don't know. So given my age, I think I can't switch around too many different venues starting over again. So to build on what I already have in my resume, I was to stick with property management. And also, I think I might want to go towards commercial management versus residential. And if not that, then IT.
Okay. I have a question.
Sure.
I have an interview question.
Okay,
So,
go ahead.
So Irene,
Yeah.
tell me about a time you had a really difficult customer and how you managed that customer.
Okay. In which industry?
Let's talk from a property management. If you were in residential property management, talk about a really irate resident sometime and how you were able to turn them around and make them a happy resident.
Okay, so I had one situation where our laundry machines, somebody was washing clothes and we had an emergency leak down in the garage. And we had to call the contractor in, and it had nothing to do with us in the office. And one resident was washing clothes, and she was irate, like really irate, because of the fact that we had to turn the water off while her clothes were washing.
Okay.
I tried to talk to her. I offered her, she could contact the laundry company because we don't own the machines, we rent them, so that she can get reimbursed, but she was really irate. So it was $3 for 2 loads, and I just went and put $5 on a card and gave it to her.
Okay.
Rather than trying to drag upper management into it, and that could take weeks, which means that she could stay, build on her level of upsetness could build.
Sure.
Just to end it right there, it's $5, make her happy. I care. I'm sorry. I apologize. Even though it's not my fault, I apologize anyway, and I sympathize with your situation. And here you go.
Excellent.
Very good.
That's
Great use of a story too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because I was drawn in. I was like, okay, what happened?
Yeah. And a very common question in jobs that deal with people, right? So someone presents to you and, a nursing home resident is upset, or an IT tech, you're at a help desk and someone calls because their computer's not working, or in your case, property management. How do you assess a situation, the level of upsetness? How do you take the resources available to you, in this case, a small amount of money and your, apologies, and solve the problem. And like you said, you didn't have to escalate it. It didn't take 6 weeks and 20 emails to get $3 back in her pocket. You made her whole with $5 and a little bit more. And she still had the inconvenience of wet clothes halfway through, but at least she would be able to restart her laundry and go on with her life once the water came back. Yeah.
And that was a very positive story.
Yeah.
So you always want to think of one, and that's why practice again makes a lot of sense, because you don't want to just come up with some story and then the ending is, it would have been bad if you just left her clothes wet and you didn't offer any assistance and you didn't apologize. But you did. You ended. Always tell a story that's going to end on a positive note. And what you also did, I'm not sure whether it was intentional but you showed your customer service skills, right? You showed that you went out of your way. So as an interviewer, and as an employer, I'm hearing all these things that you may not have intended to say, but what I heard was, okay, she's willing to go above and beyond. You went into your own pocket, maybe, just to make sure that the customer was pleased at the end, and she didn't have to spend a whole week being mad. So I heard a lot of things in your response. So think about the things that we're going to hear from your response. So very good.
Thank you.
And if I could just add, the one thing that you did at the beginning was you just took a minute, right? You didn't answer immediately. You paused and you were like, and then you started telling your story. And it's really okay too to take a moment.
Yes.
To figure out what your answer is. And so that I'm sure it was unintentional, but you just demonstrated yet another really good skill, that it's okay to take a moment and pause and because it can be really uncomfortable to sit there in silence for just a moment while you compose your thought, but to just take that moment and that beat to just be in silence and think through what your answer is can be really helpful for you and your confidence in your answer. And the interviewer, they won't care.
Yeah.
It's totally fine.
And that's a great point, Lindsay. And the way I usually explain this to people is when you stop. So Irene, when you stopped for a moment at the beginning to compose your thoughts, that might have felt to you like an eternity. Like, I don't have an answer. I've got to find something in the back of my brain. Time passes differently when you're in the hot seat answering questions than it does for the person asking the question. So like Lindsay noticed, we didn't notice anything but a thoughtful pause to collect yourself, whereas your brain is moving a mile a minute, pulling things together and synthesizing a story and then telling the story. So do give yourself that freedom to take a moment. It may feel like a long moment to you. It doesn't to the rest of the world, and pull yourself that story together and then tell the story.
Thank you.
I also like how you pulled in that though you're dealing with an irate customer, or what came to be an irate customer, you also dealt with an emergency situation in the building because you had to get the water turned off right away because of what had occurred. And then you brought in the customer piece and de-escalated that situation.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, you're gonna have
That was really good, Erin.
Thank you.
You're gonna have to help me. The one that's on the iPhone.
Ayub is next.
Ayub.
Okay, Shayma did. All right, I'm ready for it.
Okay. He came live. I like to see.
I'm ready.
You're ready. He was over there looking up some answers.
I was just thinking about Irene, her answer, which she said, because I was just thinking of all the other things. Because I remember when I moved in here, she did a lot of things that really, outstood. It was a lot of good customer service, and I was gonna actually mention it, and I was like, wait a second, this is just for employment stuff. So I don't have to mention it.
No, it's okay.
But yeah, so yeah, she did a couple things with me when I moved in here, and that she made me want to move in here because of the way she was, acting. Her customer service skills were great, and it really stood out to me. She came in on a day she didn't have to accommodate to me, and She was very professional, very honest, and I really liked that.
Awesome.
See all those
Yeah.
skills,
Mhm.
those transferable skills, as we call them.
Yeah.
All right. Are you ready?
Yeah, ready. Go
Okay.
ahead.
What type of job are you looking for first?
Okay, so I will take the easy path and say it's the field I'm already in right now. I do HVAC. I'm a parts purchasing agent. So it would be the same thing, but it would be with one of our vendors, maybe Carrier or York.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Are you, tell me, where do you see yourself in the next 2 to 3 years with us at Wesley HVAC?
Okay, so well, first of all, I see myself getting cross-trained, and once I learn um, one section of the department, I would like to move over and learn other sections, and eventually be able to lead a team.
Okay.
Excellent. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
That was
Thank you.
great.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
what
it showed you're eager to learn. It shows you have ambition. You want to lead people and train. That was excellent.
Thank you.
Yep, I like that because for all those reasons. Thank you, Brad. That's exactly what I was looking for. So with his response, he showed that he's willing to learn something else, right? So when that question is asked, and or if that question is asked, remember they want to hear that you want to do something not necessarily different, but that you want to expand and that you have goals of,
Mhm.
and they also want to hear that you're thinking of that longevity piece, right? They want to hear that you're thinking about, okay, I'm going to switch over and be cross-trained, because as an employer, what I'm hearing is, okay, he's looking to stay. This is not somebody that's going to that's looking to leave in 2 to 3 years. And then I'm hearing you that you have goals, that you want to be a leader. So those are all excellent things that you said, because as an employer, I'm hearing all of what you may not have said right out, right? This is somebody that I can count on, and maybe 2 years I can promote them, right?
Mhm.
And I can teach them whatever. They said they're eager, so excellent response.
It's not it's amazing that you said that, because when I actually got hired for this position, I had the same response from the manager. I mean, he was like, not everybody's fit to be a leader. It was basically indirectly telling me that we have an open position, in the future if you stay with us,
Yeah, see?
for a leadership position. So yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Anybody else?
I think that was realistic too. He didn't say that in the next 2, 3 years he become CEO of the company or
Right.
sell you this big dream of what he's going to do. He was very honest, and you could see the pathway to what you're saying.
Great point, because I have interviewed some people that are just started in the fire service, and when they come in and say they want to be the fire chief, that's that's a great goal, but when we're talking about, remember to keep it to smaller chunks, because although we love ambition, we want you to have goals, but to come in right at entry level and say you want to be the fire chief in the next couple years, that may speak a lot of it could be positive, but it can also be seen as, okay, this is somebody that's going to come in and just try to maybe skip steps necessarily, or be unhappy if that goal is not achieved in a certain amount of time, right?
Or demonstrate that they haven't fully taken the time to get to know the company or the path, right? Because there's
Yes.
a lot of steps in
Yes.
between starting in an industry and at a career and being a fire chief. So
Yeah.
you demonstrated not just what Tiffany said, that maybe you're going to be unhappy or you want, but skip steps, but also you don't have a full understanding of what the job or the company is.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Okay, was that everybody? Y'all want to do another round, or what you think?
Tiffany, I have a couple of questions
Sure,
before we do
absolutely.
another round. So my first one is about accents. We all have accents, but I know, speaking from someone who, I don't consider myself a native speaker of English, because I spoke two other languages before I spoke English. So I guess for me, the tip for people with accents is just to slow down when you talk. Definitely when you get stuck on a word, or like when you pronounce a word that the interviewer doesn't really understand, and they ask you, you can take your time and repronounce the word. I've had some personal experiences with that. So I don't know if you guys have any other tips for people who are not native speakers of English, or yeah.
I would say, you know, it's all, heck, I could work on my accent. I've been here since birth, right? So like we can always improve on things. I lived in China for a while. And I didn't speak any Chinese whatsoever. I mean, very minimal. There's a lot of sort of nonverbal ways to communicate. Let your personality come through with a smile. I think those things are universal. So it never hurts to sort of improve your, you know, your enunciation or pronunciation of certain words. There are a lot of things you can do to make up for it. If it's something that's really, you know, HVAC, for example, I think it's good to know sort of the jargon of the industry. But you know, also I wouldn't be so self-conscious that you feel like you have to hide an accent or anything either.
Right. I think it's incumbent on us as hiring managers to not penalize for accents in any way. You know, the fact that someone is a second language speaker is impressive. There is a lot of work that goes into changing countries and learning languages. And I've hired people from all over the world who had all different accents, but I always was, you know, very cognizant to ask a clarifying question, or, you know, give them a chance to supply a second word that might have been closer to what their intended meaning was. And also, you know, people who struggle with pronunciation, oftentimes they've learned the word from a book. That is a wonderful trait. That means someone is reading, they're learning, they may not have used a word spoken before. I never want to hold that against them. But do your best. I think, you know, as any student of a foreign language, do your best and work on the things that you know you want to work on to learn, and ask for help. And if you're in an interview situation where you can't quite express yourself, pause for a moment, because again, that pause to us feels like nothing. To you, gives you time to find, oh, I was really trying to find this word, I can't find it, but it means this. And that's completely acceptable.
Thank you. My other question is using word fillers. Like I know, like I just use like, or so how do you a trick for, or tip for reducing? I know you cannot completely eliminate it, but what are some tips for it? Like just
recording yourself and watching yourself is the #1 way to get rid of filler words and filler sounds. I may like all those filler words, and in interview situations where you're speaking off the cuff, it's not as critical. When I work with public speakers who want to, you know, be eloquent and command a stage and talk to a room full of people, I do work on the filler words. And sometimes I'll stand in the back and like raise my hand, you just used a filler word. And that visual feedback, they're like, I don't want you to raise your hand anymore. So they stop using the filler words. But for, you know, just at home, videotape yourself, watch it. It's painful to watch yourself on video. Acknowledge that it's painful, but we all have this last year of Zoom where we've seen our face on the screen a lot. So we've had some exposure therapy to this. Make it a little easier. And then slow down, just slow down, because time passes differently for you than for the person you're talking to. And slowing down allows you to filter out all those filler words, to filter out all the sounds. And you'll think about it, you'll obsess about it for a little while, and then it will become less difficult and less difficult over time, and eventually it just stops happening.
Richard gave all my tips. That's exactly what I was going to say. Record yourself. We
Yeah.
all have cell phones, right? That's the easiest way. Just turn it around, put it on video, flip the screen around and record yourself. Or again, I always say utilize your children. If they're old enough, you can do just what Richard just said. Okay, every time I say and, or every time I say like, raise your hand. I mean, it's always, you can make it fun, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, you're also training your young one how to use less filler words. So I always try to bring in the kids to make it fun, but recording yourself and slowing down are the biggest tips.
My final question is, I know that an interview is an interview, but at some point, you do have questions to ask the company or the interviewer. When is the best time to do that? Do you wait till the end, or sometimes you worry about forgetting questions as they ask you questions? So just some tips on, I know it's an interview, but it's also a dialogue at some point. So you just wait for the end to ask your questions, or ask questions come to you in between them asking you questions? Can you ask questions as well?
I think it's best to wait to the end. I mean, I know different jobs and interviewers are different, but most in the fire service, at least, we always have prepared questions with prepared responses, and then at the end, and we'll always say up front, at the end, we'll give you an opportunity to ask any questions. And that was one of my points so I'm glad you brought that up, that I forgot to say. I always have at least one or two questions to ask the employer, because again, you can display that you've done some research, as well as just letting them know that, okay, I didn't just come here to interview. I want to have dialogue with you. I want to speak more than just your prepared response. A really great question that I love is when people ask at the end, what are you looking for in an employee? Or what skills are you looking for? That's a great question you can ask.
Yep. The way I typically ask that question is, what are the most important skills you're looking for that you're using to determine who you're going to hire?
Right.
Another really good question is, tell me about, ask the interviewer about their experience at the company. How did you come to work here, and what has your journey through the company been like? The most important thing is to ask a thoughtful question. Anybody can ask, when's the first pay rise, or how much vacation there is. You could get down into the basics of the employment, and those just show you, have an interest, but doesn't show you researched the company or thought about how you might fit into the company, or how they might contribute to you and you might contribute to them. Those kind of cultural things that most people talk about in interviewing now, company culture and how do you fit. So think about thoughtful questions. There's always time to ask the basic questions about the structure of the hours or wages. That always comes later in the process. And like Tiffany said, any good interviewer will give you time at the end to ask your questions. But if something really urgent comes to mind and you don't want to miss an opportunity to say, is it okay if I ask a question real quick? Can I ask something? And most interviews are like, oh, of course, yeah, ask away. Every once in a while you get someone who says, could you save it till the end, right? And that's fine too, but don't be afraid to ask, to interject a question, say, can I ask a question?
You can always bring a pen and paper to any interview, and some people feel awkward doing that, but I sometimes would write down questions as the interviewer is speaking to make points and circle them and say, I want to recap on that down the road.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No questions?
This was a fantastic session. Thank y'all so much. I'm really glad glad that everybody participated, and
great.
I learned.
Oh, you cutting out.
Rose.
Oh no.
While she unfreezes, I also want to thank everyone for being here today. Please, if you haven't filled out your surveys, I think we're on survey 3 now, really important to do that. I can send a paper copy if you're having challenges with the electronic version, but it really gives us information that we can use to better this process when we do it again next time. So please, I urge everyone that hasn't filled out the service yet to do so, and just let me know, send me an email or a text. I can provide a paper version of it for you if you're having a hard time accessing the electronic version. And I think Laura's unfrozen, so is she unfrozen?
She's thawing.
Oh, and one more thing. I just looked at my paper. One more tip I forgot to say, distractions, right? So make sure, especially if you're on virtual, we had somebody doing this today. I was trying to see if I can find one. The pen clicking.
Yeah.
So try to start working on your nervousness. We all get nervous, right? I get nervous speaking, but try to minimize the distractions, like the twisting in the seat, or try to sit up straight. Make sure your camera angles. I probably should have had my thing set up a little bit more. So practice all of these things before you get on, and that's one of the things with the technology. You can you can start a meeting in Zoom at least, and on Teams or different platforms. You can start a meeting, by yourself. And that way, that's where you're checking your lighting and you're checking your angles, and you may need to set up, but just make sure you're not fidgeting, you're not eating. I did have that tip down, especially in a virtual environment. It's okay to take a sip of water, because there may be a lot of questions. So water, I believe is okay, but just try not too much fidgeting, moving around and stuff.
Question. That brings me to ask a question, please. So should you make sure the camera's right in front of you versus kind of on the side? So it's looking right into the camera?
I think it's good to look right into it.
Yep. And let me give you a visual example. So, and I'll do it in real time. So I'm sitting on a sofa and my screen is angled. And so my shoulders look really big and my head looks really small. If you stand up and look straight into the camera, your proportions change.
Wow.
Right? So now I look more like a talking head on TV. I'm holding my laptop up because I don't have anything else to do. But so when I do interviews, I usually sat my MacBook up on a high table, or if I didn't have a high table, I'd put it on a chair and I'd kneel on the ground in front of it so that I was straight up and down. And then you get this better camera angle, because then otherwise you're back down to weird angles and all the window behind me is weird shaped and all that, because it's just awkward camera angles.
Very good advice.
I didn't know about the angle and the head proportion to show.
Yeah, it makes a difference. It makes a difference. Candidates look fantastic when they stand up and they have their computer monitor up real high and they look like they're on TV. So.
Yeah, sometimes I'll just tell people, I'll say, can you move your camera back? Like they may get on and I can only see this part. Or I'll tell people, can you just fix your camera?
Yep.
And use books and props around the house. But
yep.
Yeah, kitchen counter, and then put something under it.
Yep.
Then it's higher up.
Yeah. Lots of tricks.
Yep. All right, that's all I had.
Same for me.
I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Laura, do you have any more announcements before we?
I do not. Thank you all so much for coming and for presenting. It was really great. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you everyone for willing to participate.
So we'll see you all again next Tuesday,
Thank you.
promptly at 7:30.
Thank you for interviewing us.
Welcome.
All
And
right.
everyone do have a good evening.
Okay, have a good evening.
See you guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. You all have a
Yeah.
wonderful night.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining.
Bye.
Thank you, Richard.
Wesley? Chief Wesley,
Yes.
is your phone number still the same?
Yeah, what do you have? Do you have it? Do you have it?
It's,
What do you
it's in
have?
my phone. I didn't want to say it out loud.
Yeah, I don't mind. I was actually gonna put it in there for everybody. And we can do that at the end if they have any questions.
I thought we were at the end. I'm sorry. Oh, we're at the end. 571-245.
Yep.
680.
Yes.
Okay. So, and I texted my daughter while we were talking, so she's excited. So I will reach out to you as far as like what the dates are for the camp.
Okay.
Or what
Yep.
website do I go to find out?
Give me a call because I don't know it right offhand, but the dates it's in June this year and it's not an overnight this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the best time? Tomorrow sometime?
Yep. You can call me tomorrow.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
June 21st through the 25th that week.
6/21 through 6/25.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Give me a call tomorrow and I'll have all the information for you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good
You're
seeing
welcome.
you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Edgar.
All right. Good night, everybody.